If you're a dud in the office, with all due respect, you're not going to get to that next level. I love working with my friends. My teams love working with their vendors, and we get to know each other and still be creative, and nothing gets pulled out of a box. I love the excitement of the business piece of the puzzle with the design piece of the puzzle and being able to see this finished product.
Hello and welcome back, Architect Nation. Enoch Sears here, founding principal at Business of Architecture, and I am beyond excited to bring you today's interview. Today's guest has the unique privilege of not only having inherited a successful architectural practice, but actually been instrumental in helping that practice grow, as well as carrying that legacy forward into the future today. If you've ever felt overwhelmed by the constant juggle between managing your team and securing new projects, perhaps it seemed at times like there's never enough time to focus on both design excellence and business growth, you're going to love this episode. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been frustrated by the challenge of maintaining a consistent project pipeline? The struggle to delegate effectively without compromising quality? Perhaps the uncertainty of scaling your practice sustainably, in other words, growing while not working more. Well, on today's episode, you'll discover the unexpected strategy that can double your project inquiries without more marketing, a simple delegation framework that frees up your time while enhancing team performance, and the counterintuitive approach to growth that most architecture firm owners overlook. In today's episode, I sit down with Scott Spector, principal of Spector Group, a renowned and highly awarded firm known for blending creative leadership with business savvy. With over 35 years of experience, Scott has led projects for clients like Brookfield Property, the Carlyle Group, and VaynerMedia, shaping the skyline of the New York metro area. As a second-generation firm owner, Scott brings a rare perspective on legacy, growth, and the future of architectural practice leadership.
Today's episode is sponsored by Vectorworks. Why settle for switching between multiple design programs to complete a single project? With Vectorworks Architect, you don't have to. Simplify your workflow with a hybrid 2D and 3D modeling environment made to support your work, from the pre-design phase all the way through construction documentation in a single platform. Learn more about the tool that can help you accomplish everything you need with the free 7-day trial of Vectorworks Architect. Get started here at vectorworks.net/business of architecture.
As a reminder, if you haven't already watched the free Firm Owner Masterclass on the Smart Practice Method, what are you waiting for? Discover how to eliminate overwhelm and slay chaos in your practice. You can focus on the architecture again. Go to smartpracticemethod.com to access the free video. And if you already have watched that video, I encourage you to go back and watch it again. We've recently updated it with new information. That's smartpracticemethod.com. All right, Architect Nation, grab your notepad, your iPad, whatever you used to take notes with. Let's dive into these game-changing insights shared with us by Scott Spector.
Hello, Scott, and welcome to the Business of Architecture.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Scott, let's start out talking about your father, Michael Hare Spector, who started the firm back in 1965. I want to cast a little bit of, number one, to honor his memory. I'm assuming he's passed on, or is he still alive?
Yes, he passed on in 2018, yes.
Okay, so to honor what he's built, and then we'll take the conversation from there. So 1965, what do you know about the early days of why your father started the firm? Can you fill us on a bit of background around that?
Yes. Actually, my grandfather was an architect as well. Did not have his own firm. He worked for a national shoe manufacturing company and showroom called A.S. Beck, B-E-C-K. And from there, that I believe my father got his inspiration from. He graduated Syracuse University with a 5-year Bachelor of Architecture. Met my mother in high school, so they were lovers, so to speak, in their 14, 15-year-old days, and throughout. Got his degree and worked with a few different firms early on in his career. A company called Harris Abramowitz in Manhattan. Then relocated to Long Island. And let's use 1965 as our benchmark of time when he started his own practice. Started in residential, a variety of different homes in, primarily the Long Island area. Dabbled a little bit in Manhattan, but Long Island was his, his canvas to be able to, over the years from I'm going to say 67 through the late 90s, early 2000s. He was coined the architect that changed the face of Long Island, literally. I would say if you know the Long Island Expressway, every other building along the Long Island Expressway was either a speculative office building designed by Michael Harris Spector and Associates, which throttled to Spector Group ultimately, or a direct tenant corporate user campus. And we used to laugh. We used to visit Dad's dirt on a regular basis. Didn't matter what condition it was in. It could be a foundation, it could be curtain wall going up, it could be an interior. And these are projects from 50,000 to 1.5 million square foot buildings on Long Island. So my education was in construction and build. And I mean, what better way other than being involved in sports my whole life? That was my energy.
I have to ask, what sport, Scott?
I
Or
grew up
sports?
as a soccer player, baseball player. Played lacrosse at the University of Michigan in their club program for the first 2 years. Of course, fraternity sports, everything, and you can imagine. But yes, I grew up an athlete and just loved every second of it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I'm sure
Yeah,
we'll circle back to that
yeah,
experience later in the
yeah. I
conversation.
could talk about that
Y-
all day long too.
That's the true side of passion.
Absolutely.
Scott, these projects, you said a lot of them were speculative office buildings. You kind of gave us a different mix of buildings. Was your father involved in the development side of that, the financing side, or was he purely on the
Excellent question.
architecture?
He dabbled with clients, at risk of architectural fee, a few of those projects. I'm going to say 5 to 8 of those projects. Some of them with developers, some of them with the real estate brokerage and corporate services folks that were part of that. And that real estate has some of it is passed down to my mother and our family, so that's still there. But yes, you know, as an architect at that level, you're obviously doing as much as you can at risk. But architecturally, as we all know in the world of architecture, we have to be very smart with our fees and how that's parsed out to our teams. And if there's something left over, he invested in that, and I've done the same thing.
It's a successful story that you've just shared with us about what your father built in the practice. I mean, we talk with a lot of firms here, and to have a firm that's started in 1965, still going strong, has passed on to the next generation of leadership. Just for our listeners, that's commendable. It's amazing once you understand what it takes to build a business. It's amazing what your father's done, and we're going to get on to what you've taken that forward. I'm curious, Scott, from your perspective, being son in the family and then actually working in the practice, what would you say would have been some of your father's keys to success that allowed him to do that? Because it's very unusual in the world of architecture to grow a practice that significantly.
I believe there's a personality piece to this puzzle, and just a genuine enthusiasm, and that's probably my other favorite word. That he transmitted to his clients, his vendors, his kids, his just anyone that he came into contact with. And I get this all the time. I'll run into a colleague of his, on the street in Manhattan. It's like, oh, I miss your dad. He had that just, and by the way, you've got that too. And your brother has that also, who, by the way, is an architect. And my son, Jake, he's an architect and now works with me. So, look to the future. And they're just that optimistic, positive, vibe that he gives off and translates to his clients. And there was nobody that I ever met in my life that presented as well as my father to community boards, to inspectors, to clients, and treated everybody with that respect that they deserved and not just, trying to get past something. So I think that's translated to myself, and we bring that to our project managers, our senior managers, my chief of operations, to my accounting teams and marketing teams. So if you're a dud in the office, with all due respect, and I'm not the firing type ever, we can talk about that as well. You're not going to get to that next level. So you need to bring that positivity. And obviously, we're realistic. If something's going on, we're going to take care of that and be smart and attack it. But if you come at it from a drip viewpoint, that's basically unacceptable.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
you did point at something interesting there, which I wanted to ask you about. I hear you with the positive energy, and I feel it, and I can see the results of the practice that has entailed. Oftentimes, people tend to err sometimes on it's a fine balance. I found, Scott, in terms of, you mentioned some accountability, some, hey, when there's a problem, we're going to attack it. Can you kind of talk about that? So we get the positive, we can understand that. Awesome. How do you balance that with real world results? Because it's easy, and this is sometimes we see with practices where they fall into the just wanting to make everyone feel good, and then they find it very difficult to hold people accountable in a way that empowers them.
That's an amazing comment, by the way. And I would say at moments within my career, it could be as early as last week and 25 years ago, you know, just trying keeping everybody happy, so to speak, and working through that. I'm much better now than I used to be at a given person's responsibility to either our, design direction in construction, making sure that design direction is carried through, that material is not value engineered because XYZ client at the last minute changed their mind. We'll work through that with them, but if it's been specified and it's been priced, and we want the design to follow through, and we're just not going to sit there and you know take it, if you will, that a contractor says, "Oh, I can't get it in 18 weeks. It has to be here." Well, we'll help you do that. We'll get on the phone. We'll speak to the subcontractor. We'll speak to our rep that promised it to us, that we made sure needed to be there because our client loved that material. That happens day in and day out. Day in and day out, with as many friends as that we have with contractors and subcontractors and owners reps and real estate brokers. So we try and work those relationships in a positive way so it helps our clients. Because I'm sure everybody in your, that you've interviewed, the repeat client is the best client. And we want to work with friends. They become really good friends. So I'd like to have 20 good friends versus 200 that have many different clients, both locally and nationally, which we've really worked with and developed. And it just becomes that much more fun. I mean, I love working with my friends. My teams love working with their vendors, and we get to know each other and still be creative. And nothing gets pulled out of a box, at least in our firm.
Thanks, Scott.
If I answered your question.
What I'm hearing from you is that you pair this positive optimism and this enthusiasm and this excitement with let's call it a very, very strong determination, with a can-do attitude, like, we're going to get this done. We're going to make results happen. And you're bringing both of those together is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. It's an important piece of the puzzle.
Okay. Let's talk about when you came onto the firm. So childhood, I'm curious, childhood memories. Having a father as an architect, you talked about showing up to the job site. You talked about being there for, seeing the tenant build outs. Obviously, it appealed to you. You somehow decided, hey, this is a career that I want to go into. I remember reading a LinkedIn thread, it must have been 10 years ago, Scott, and someone was saying, hey, my son's thinking about going into architecture. What do you suggest? And there was just comment after comment. It was so sad. Comment after comment of
Don't
architects
do
saying,
it.
don't do it. Stay away. You'll never make money.
And that's
It's
why. And honestly, that's what that is, because that person's XYZ investment banker, hedge fund, private equity concern, and with all due respect, from a dollar viewpoint, they're probably right. But I'm very fortunate to have had a mentor, a father that created a reputation to bring it to X level. And it was incumbent upon me and just my own drive and enthusiasm to take that in a different direction, or a complement to that direction, which was our New York City headquarters. We had Long Island, so New York City, bring that to its own beast in a positive way. And you can make a very good living owning your firm, being senior members within your firm, and we're a 50, 60 person concern. So we're considered a mid-sized firm with muscle. And we compete against the big boys all day long. And sometimes we'll win, and sometimes we'll lose. But we're right in the mix with all of them. On 50,000 footers, two with all 500,000 square foot projects. And obviously, with 50 people, you can't do 50, 500,000 square foot projects. We're smart, we're realistic. We'll do what's needed.
Scott, tell me about the New York office. Tell me how that came about. You had the firm was headquartered in Long Island, and then tell me about how it moved to Manhattan.
I had a desire to do work in Manhattan. Again, I was part of the Long Island office for roughly 10 years out of school, and did a lot of the work we had discussed. Spent a lot of time on site on Long Island, both in the construction piece and the design piece. And there was a market that I was fully aware of. I had lived in Manhattan out of school, so I was reverse commuting to Long Island and made a conscious decision to jump into New York City. Let's call it interiors, building, owner-related work, and hopefully one day, larger construction type projects in the city. Everyone wants to do this skyscraper. That's always a dream. We're part of those things, but we're not designing one from scratch at the moment. So we opened up in what's called an HQ business center. I would say 1998's WeWork, if you will, at 300 Park Avenue. Literally a 5x5, 5x10 foot office with a desk. There were 200 of them in that space. Befriended some really good people within that zone and started my networking. And through friends and brokers and real estate attorneys and you name it, was able to create that network. So it's almost starting the firm again, but again having the reputation built on what we had on Long Island and surrounding. So I had, I'm going to say, a bit of an advantage to be able to do that startup a little faster. It took about a year and a half before we started getting a flow of work that I brought back to Long Island to design and produce. And then from there, about 3 years in, we opened up in a townhouse at 12 East 44th Street in Manhattan, a single floor, and then 2 floors, and then moved up the block to 19 West 44th Street into 10,000 square feet. And then that 7-year lease took us to 183 Madison, the full second floor space, God gorgeous space, 15-foot ceilings. It was retail, and converted that 12,000 square foot space with 25 people. And we were there for 10 years and grew that to 40 people. Moved up the block to 200 Madison Avenue, took on 15,000 square feet, whether it was right or wrong. Right after, in COVID, if you will, built that space out, and that's where we are today on a 10-year deal. And the space is good. We did everything for ourselves that we did with our clients.
I
Full
love that.
workplace
I love that.
strategy, everybody involved. You name it, we did it for ourselves. Space is gorgeous, in our opinion. It's a wonderful laboratory for us, and our guys and girls really, really love it. And at the moment, we're on a hybrid plan still from COVID for lots of different reasons. And that's still working for us, regardless of the pressures out there that some are at 4. None of the architectural firms are at 5. But, that's always a discussion that I have because I'm a people person. That's just me. Selfishly, I would love to have 5. I'm in the office every day. I'm second one in. And it's just so important to have that connection. And you seem like a wonderful person, but I guarantee we would click that much more if this was an in-person interview versus on over Zoom or Teams or whatever we're on at the moment.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. So Scott, when you joined the firm, that about 10, I think you said about 10 years before you started the when and became the landing party for the Manhattan office.
Exactly. 1988, joined the firm.
1988, joined
February
the firm.
of '88. I worked at another firm in the
Okay.
city for literally 14 months. My dad at that time actually had an aortic aneurysm out of left field at age 47. Almost lost him. And it was one of those things where, okay, I'm still wet behind the ears from school, but made a conscious decision. This is where I needed to be. He obviously recovered. He did fantastic. and I started my career on Long Island in February of '88.
Wow. Do you remember how do you navigate the whole "my father's the principal of the firm" dynamic?
Always an interesting thing. The same thing my
Yeah, I'd
son
like
is
to hear about that.
same thing my son is navigating at the moment in my own firm. So I'm like, I feel like I'm my dad. It's like so much fun. Um, you know, I think through really hard work, sincere hard work, um, not just putting the hours in, but that caring. And what I learned from my dad and others at that early juncture in life is you need to be personable with all. That interaction, and I had senior designers and design directors and project architects that I worked for and treated me like, with respect that I treated them. By the way, it also didn't hurt. We had an award-winning uh, softball team in our Long Island office, and bringing the athletic piece to the puzzle to the table. And it may sound, rather trivial. I was a damn good softball player, and we won a lot of championships as a kid. And we did the same thing in New York City with our team. So team building, collaboration. It's not just all about architecture. You need to have that downtime. You need to have that fun, and that involvement.
How did you manage go back to your school time, how did you manage being an athlete and studying architecture?
And very, 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 very difficult, just like you can imagine. All architects complain. They're in there till midnight. You're on demand, so you have to figure out that balance. And we're kids, right? We're running a million miles an hour, and our bodies can handle that. So you have to take care of that body as best you can as a kid, meaning 18 to 22, and then for grad school for 2 years, getting a master's, which is a little bit different, the master's piece. But the undergrad piece at the University of Michigan, I'm at the University of Michigan, and there's nothing like athletics there, blended with amazing architecture. So I I, I took that to a level of finding that balance. I was never the A plus student, nor tried to strive to do that. So you have to give a little bit on both sides if you want both of those lives. And some way, shape, or form, I was able to navigate it.
How do you feel like that athletic experience has translated into your ability to work with teams, work with people in the
It's it's
practice?
it's the core of my being. I love working with teams, and every sport, other than golf and honestly tennis back in the day, is a true team sport, and you need to rely on others to get where we need to go. I mean, literally jumping into our podcast here, I was on a call with about 7 people putting together a request for proposal response for a sizable project, and n- never going to try and do this myself. And I've surrounded myself with people that have been with us 5, 10, 15 years who know what they're doing, and that interaction and input. We literally buttoned up the proposal. Let's do it 2 o'clock, and I said I got a podcast with Enoch. You go do, and it's going to be an amazing response, and we'll see with our 5 competitors where we land.
Has it been difficult at all for you, Scott, to let go of the reins, so to speak, to be able to surround yourself with people who are smart, intelligent, get things done?
Yes, I have been able to trust those in marketing positions, in operations positions, our leaders of design, our senior and regular project managers. Absolutely. I will always have my nose into it before a design presentation just for basic, critique and review. If I'm part of that given team, you can't do everything, nor do I want to do everything, but have to have that interaction down to invoicing and how that invoice looks and what we've standardized and what needs to be customized because it's that important for that person in accounts payable on the other side to be able to see something clearly, neatly, with full description, so we're not spending and wasting time on trying to get paid more than we already are. So it's down to the last degree. And yes, you said you had gone on the website. That's a new version. It's about a year and a half old now that we transformed from what we had. We're super proud of it. Entire firm was super proud of it. We had a consultant, our PR consultant had an arm, and we tapped that knowledge and expertise. And it was a labor of love for, I'm going to say, 6 to 8 months, which is typical, and nothing out of a can. You can't break it. If you're out of the can, use somebody else.
Thanks, Scott. Beautiful. Your team sent over some numbers here. So in terms of individual project profitability, you guys said you're about 18%, give or take, which is
We shoot for an
which is great.
18%, net profit. Yes.
Yep. And right now you feel like you're closing about 60 to 75% of your projects.
Yeah, actually, I'd say in the last 3 weeks, God bless us, it's a little bit more than that. Our work entails, the major RFPs that you're talking about, more of the, streamlined, basic RFPs, if you will, for more tenant direct work. And we do 25% of our work is probably building owner driven, where we'll handle the building, and it'll be turnkey design work, it'll be infrastructure work, it'll be specialty, lobby and amenity center work, and we'll have that relationship with the building, and we can get a phone call. Okay, we've got 20 pre-built, 10 turnkeys, got to be done in blah blah blah. No marketing involved at that point. It's just based on your successes of your last 5 and 10 projects, to be honest with you. And then they'll put out an RFP maybe 2 years later to keep you honest. And we're always honest. It's very straightforward. So it's self-marketing. And they'll be in love with my project manager and designer. And they fall in love with these guys and girls for sure. And they're our marketing. And they're able to get involved in marketing and understand the marketing, not only servicing their client, but understanding and taking the pulse of those tenants who have no names yet that are seeing these different spaces. And by the time they're in their first pieces of test fitting and early production work, we'll know who that tenant is, and we'll pursue that together, both on the turnkey landlord side and then privately for any type of furniture or project management or ancillary services that they need directly. And every one of my PMs and designers understands what that is. So they're part of our marketing success. And we preach this. It's so important for that, I guess, layered approach to our marketing program in a positive way, which helps our client.
How about new client reach out? Do you guys have any active new client reach out, or do you find that that you have so many incoming inquiries that you don't need to do that?
That is my job. That is 75% of what I do for a living, is that interaction with at least in New York City, the real estate brokerage community, the legal real estate community, from owners, reps, and general project manager, independent entities, construction managers, vendors. I mean, we have furniture dealers referring us to work with relationships that in the last 5 years, I never dreamed of getting these types of projects or the introduction to these different firms because they enjoy that working interaction with our teams. And it'll be team-based. So we need to use Scott, Simon, Gergana, Colin, etc. in our team because they just finished 50 to 100,000 square feet, and it may sound cliche. The space is gorgeous. They're on time. They're on budget, and we want to work with them now in West Palm, Cincinnati, and LA. I mean, what else? That brings chills to me. Literally, I get that excited when you know that your people are doing their job, both architecturally, design-wise, and from a business perspective. I mean, that's the blend.
What are the numbers, Scott, that you use to manage the practice? What would you say the top 2 or 3 KPIs that you're looking at when you're trying to figure out how things are going?
I think we are consistently looking at, and we do our staffing on a weekly basis. I mean, we're literally all sitting in a room, and there are pre-staffing meetings to when we get to that. So we're looking at our teams and who are on those teams, and are we balanced that given week into that given month, of what our spend is on an hourly basis from a billing perspective. We have all of our 99% of our fees are fixed fees. 98. We have two or three clients that demand, honestly, time and expense because they demand that team's on-call abilities, literally day and night, which is fine as long as it's not killing my guys. You can't kill me; it's impossible. But we want to make sure everyone's got a life. They really do. I mean, we have so many families on families, and we're just so darn lucky to have people that have been with us 5, 10, 20, and 37 years like me. So I've got three 37-year-old people down to five, and that number and that spend on a weekly and monthly basis, especially during billing and where we're tracking, that's our one of our key metrics for sure. Our overhead is our overhead. We know what our rent is. We understand what it takes to operate. We keep an eye on our payroll and what those numbers are, and obviously our overtime, because when we do have folks that do overtime, they actually get paid for overtime. In our world, and as well as most, many architects don't. They really don't. So we want them to be covered, and it's our job to fight for that extra time or additional service. Maybe fight isn't. Anticipate. Try and put positive in everything. Everything. So it's that important to us, and we keep an eye on those numbers. Our expenses are good. When I say good, they're relatively flat. Our reimbursables are not heavy. We take care of our people internally, food wise and snack wise and lunch wise, and you know we're out often. We're in summer outings. We're in fall outings. We do many a seminar internally. We designed a welcome lounge that can seat 60 people on the outside and inside, and we do panels, and it's a very interactive space.
Scott, speaking of teams, for you, what has been the key to hiring and building good teams?
Traditionally, we were an office that were not studio based. We've had 2 and 3 design directors. We've had 10 to 12 project managers, and then designers to CAD draftsmen, et cetera, with specialties of technical, marketing, and BIM directorships. About 3 years ago, we went to a 2-team process, of which they have coined them the Lavender team and the Chartreuse team, where we have literally split the firm into those two buckets, with our 3 design directors working both sides of the spectrum, so they have the pulse of the design piece. We changed those teams to keep that energy going to a certain extent with our different designers and production folks at their request. So they're not pigeonholed to, they're working on 5 different buildings for the last 5 years. They can get involved in tenant work. So there's a cultural piece that we want to make sure is satisfied, and obviously a business piece and a production piece, so we're profitable, so we can do those raises that we want to do every single year and increase those PTO days every year, so people grow and obviously have a life outside of the office. But the team approach has been a real plus, which I pushed back on. For that piece of change, I did not feel comfortable with, and we said, let's test it. And it really works. So, the old dog can learn something on a regular basis, and you have to be open to that.
And what specifically was it that you were pushing up against or pushing back against that you feel wasn't going to work?
I would say just the deliberate change of what I had been doing and learned for 25 years.
Which
and
was?
and I quote, working, which was more, we ended up having certain folks that had to talk to more project managers than they needed to, being a 50, 60 person concern. And now we were able to consolidate that, and it made it more workable from a team aspect to do that. You work with 3 or 4 different project managers, and they're working with a team that's a bit more familiar with their process, even though we have a process that throttles both teams. But, you have different personalities of project managers. You have different personalities of design directors and how they want to operate. And you want them to operate in their own. They're not. If you want a mechanical firm, I can give you 5 firms, and that's how they do it. That's not how we do it. It has to. It still has to be a bit more organic, and that differentiates us from our competitors. And we bring that out in our pitches, in our reviews, and just unless someone's really exhausted from doing too much work, it comes out in our presentations during pitches, and just that genuine enthusiasm of the profession and working within our team. Unless they're totally lying to me, which I can see through pretty well.
So Violet and Chartreuse, did I get that right?
Lavender and Chartreuse.
Lavender.
I didn't do
And
the names. They did the names, and maybe they change in 2 years, but I think our teams love it.
Lavender and Chartreuse. Remind me, what color is Chartreuse?
Sort of a greenish, yellowish tone, right?
Okay. I love that. And they went for something that's easy to pronounce, right?
I think the designers had a lot to say about that.
So these two teams, the Lavender and the Chartreuse team, do they cross pollinate? Do team members switch over? How does that dynamic work?
Only out of need, or if there is a repeat client of sorts that was on one team and when it was formulated to the other. We try and keep them in their buckets, but at certain times during the year, we will transfer one to the other or two to the other. So we still get that sort of positive interaction and not being pigeonholed in a group of 4, if you will. And our senior designers, meaning our design directors, 3 of them, jump from both, and they're part of that puzzle. To what, I think it really makes a ton of sense that Mimi, our senior designer, belongs with this group, maybe for the next 6 months with this new project. Let's see if we can make that work. And Mimi's like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I've been working with this firm in Omaha for the last 3 months, 300,000 feet. She was absolutely critical. And now that project's going more into production. They'll still use her, but she doesn't need to be the focus. And now we can reinvigorate her position and her experiences and really follow through with that. And it seems to be working.
I'm curious, do you have any gamification or friendly competition between the two teams at all?
Oh, there's huge competition. Huge.
Yeah.
Every month. They're literally competing in the office. We do a 1 or 2 hour competition, and it could be building, a model that has to sustain, books on top. It could be a quiz wedge kind of a thing, with food interaction, obviously alcohol. Though they drink a lot less now post COVID. For the record, they really do. It's like I'm watching this versus the bar cart days on Friday at 4 o'clock, and everything was gone. It's not gone anymore. It's really interesting because a lot of these folks are going back to their families also, and they have 1 and 2 and 3 kids and need to get home. But on specialty events, we do as many of those, I think, as we can. Whether it's a Central Park event or we'll do something along the waterfront in Brooklyn for a bowling event or cultural events. We'll go to different exhibits as a team, maybe a team or as a firm. Annual boat trip. We do a massive boat trip, right on the East River, all the way down and around. And it's just great for people to be together for a few hours.
Amazing. That reminds me of a management story. You may have heard this, where a consultant came into a manufacturing firm. It's one of these old stories they tell you, I think, when you get an MBA or something like that, right? But consultant came in. There's 2 kind of shifts. There's the graveyard, the people who work throughout the night, the people who work through the day. So people in the daytime, they come into the plant, and there's a gigantic 6 on the ground,
Right.
and they're wondering what that means. And I don't remember what the exact metric was. It was some measure of productivity, right? So they get all fired up and they say, no. We're not going to be bested by the night crew. And so then they leave in chalk
Yeah, it's great.
a lower number on the ground. And then before you know it, there's this kind of friendly competition. I'm curious if you leverage any of that, because I know with teams it can be challenging. Sometimes there can be negative adversarial competition, like they're getting more attention. How do you Do you do anything intentionally to help kind of like, hey guys, they got 20% on this project over here. You guys are kind of lagging 15%, man. What can we do to catch up with the Chartreuse team?
In the world of architecture, the competition, I think, internally like that is a bit simpler. It is a fun bunch of people. I'm so ridiculously fortunate to have 95% of them. I think they're all comedians in their own way. And one morning we'll find one of the senior project managers' desk decorated in almost fraternity like. It could be in caution tape. It could be in toilet paper because of an event the night before. It, and they're constantly trying to one up themselves on what they can do with that given person's stuff. Chairs maybe hit. One of the guy's chairs was hidden, and they couldn't find it, and it was like find Simon's chair. And more of that, not on a metric basis, not on a business basis. Um, no, it's not. It's not that type of competition. Now, I'm a member of, and you may know it, Young Presidents Organization or YPO if you've heard of it. So now I'm in YPO, like next level, post 50. I don't think they call it YPO Gold anymore. They call it something else. It's a different chapter. And we did a ton of that type of seminar work, and I brought that back to the firm. And we used to take on some of those more projects than how to pull from and to do certain things a little bit more productively. And we do these exercises, and let's bring in this consultant to talk from a business perspective on a senior management basis, so people can learn and not just do their job, and reinvigorate them and send them to conferences and the like. So we do that a lot as well.
When you hire, how do you protect the culture to make sure that you don't get any people who aren't a fit for the practice?
Oh, protect the culture. Well, we do our darndest from an interview process for new personnel.
Tell me about that, Scott. Tell me how do you vet that kind of thing out?
It's layered. So the contact will come in, and many a time we'll get a referral. Obviously, we love those referrals from our internal folks on all levels. And I would say that's probably 75% of our opportunities. We've worked with recruiters. I happen to like certain recruiters, but our most successful hires have been through good friends or colleagues. So it'll be that given individual with, whether it's more on the production side or on the design side, our design director or senior project manager with that given person to a certain level. My chief of operations, Carrie Beth, she'll be part of those interviews also with me after they've been vetted the first time. And we'll meet with them. We're more an exclamation point. If we'll get a referral from our design director or our PM that this person's worth really meeting and fills the niche that we want, whether we have a position open or not, meet that individual. We're always meeting with people, and we're very open with our candidates. This position, this moment may not be, but it could be in 2 months, 6 months. Do you still want to come in and meet? We've never had a no, ever, never a no. So, and then it gets to my level, and when we do an offer, that offer is made that day or the next day. It's not contemplated any further. We sort of communicate that to them if we're going to do that, so they have that confidence, and they're competing with others. We interviewed a fantastic young lady 2 weeks ago. We had met one of our junior intermediate designers, who by happenstance was the daughter of a really good friend of mine, and she didn't want me to know that she didn't come to me through her dad. She came to me through a friend, and she wanted to introduce her best friend to us to come along also. And she's been with us 2 years now. So we met with her, and here I'm thinking, oh, this candidate's going to be spectacular. She's coming from, this referral who I adore, not because she's my good friend's daughter. I tell her all day long, so if she sees this, she'll know. She is really good at what she's doing, and she's growing tremendously. So her friend, I'm thinking, this is locked up. She's going to be amazing. We're going to meet her. And I loved her. Came in, and I'm like, made an offer the next day. Literally, made the offer the next day. Said, you know what? I think I'm going to start with residential. I have a change of mind. And we're like, God bless you. You're a good person. No ill will. It was worth totally sitting with you and learning about you. And if you come back to me in 6 months or a year, which happens often, you're going to have a job because she was that good. So we value that. But it needs to be vetted by those that he or she are going to be working for and with, not just me. I would say that transition maybe 10 years ago, where I would meet the person and, we were smaller and just have that comfort and then basically meet maybe one other and we would make that decision at that point.
Mm. Scott, for you, what would you say is the secret to optimizing the performance of individuals and teams?
I would say, not trying to dictate the process too much. I'm trying to put this. There's a framework that we have worked super hard to develop to design, document, and administer. Enough of a template that project manager A can still work within and not go too far out of the box that, oh my God, why the hell did you do that? Are you absolutely out of your mind? To protect him and the firm, but also have his or her personality come through. We don't want to lose. We want people to be able to be themselves because that's why we hired them in the first place, and learn from that. And they'll learn from that because some of these personalities just go such a long way. And if you have the expertise to carry that through, so work within that box. And I am trying to give you an analogy. If you put somebody so deep in the box and you can't let them breathe, they're going to fail. They're going to suffocate. And maybe that's a common answer, but I let my project managers go, right? And if I get a phone call that, oh my God, what the heck happened? We'll have a conversation. What happened? We'll try and help, and we'll throttle back and learn. And that happens sometimes, not too often. But you have to let people grow, and that's from ground up. But the juniors and the intermediates, you can mold a bit more, and they're really sponging, and they'll interact with clients at juniors and intermediates. They do. We have clients coming in the office all the time. And by the way, from a digital viewpoint, technical viewpoint, they're 10 times better than you and me, right? So they're manipulating. The 3D is a dream. If we had that back then, oh my God, we would have killed them. I mean, it's amazing what we can produce today, and that's because of our younger teams coming out of school, and our obviously our experts.
Scott, there's a lot of things in architecture where an owner can wake up and say, oh, not again, or oh, this fire, oh, this building detailer, oh, this contractor's having something going on. There are a lot of things to allow someone to fall into a place of cynicism, a place of frustration. And I really am curious how you manage that conversation and manage to maintain the positive energy that's so important to you and that you exude.
I mean, there are times where you just have to not react so quickly. You need to think about it. For me personally, it'll be very very rare if I'm in a personal conversation like this that what, I need a day to think on that. Just based on certain experiences, if you gave me an example of sorts of what I had to have to manage through me personally, I'll get through that, and may have to. You know what? Here's what I know. I want to go confirm this with Gary to just let's do a triple check as to why did that specification get to where it is? Did we miss something on the documentation? Was there a shop drawing that didn't have that checked box done? Did our contractor use the wrong at certain levels? You need to go back and if we did it wrong, we'll take responsibility for that. You have to. I mean, what are you going to do? But we'll work with XYZ contractor to minimize that cost. And usually it comes down to dollars and cents. Sometimes it comes down to time, right? It may extend a schedule. And we're usually able to work through that, subject to the scope of the buy of that project. Where we get caught up sometimes is we'll specify something and it gets discontinued 10 minutes after the construction documents are done, finished. So, that protocol needs to be a check. It's usually our contractors and subcontractors go, it's a long lead item, discontinued. They're thinking in the back of their mind, what the hell did you do wrong? We're like, well, what's the first thing you and I do? We pick up the phone, our designer, we call our rep. What happened? We love the material. My client loves the material. We can't get it now? Is there something wrong? Oh, well, what do you mean, oh, well? You're supposed to call us. So, we have our little black book, or it's called a large black book, that we check those as best we can. That I'm going to say is probably the most difficult piece when interacting with the client. They care about the schedule. We marshal the schedule. We do every minute of every meeting, unless there's an owner's rep involved, from design through construction. Even though our construction managers do their minuting, we'll be there to input and observe and plug in what we need to plug in. But everything's got to go through us, which still the architect does from a shop drawing perspective and a consultant coordination perspective. The business side of architecture, to be blunt. We need to still manage that. And we're not artists at that point. We are architectural business people, which a lot of people don't necessarily trust outside of our world. I mean, I'm sure you've had this conversation with others. Architects are not good business people. They're artists. We still get that sometimes until some of our project managers step up and get them very comfortable. Oh, this guy can manage the schedule. I don't need this other person doing it internally in my office. You're going to do it. I can't tell you how many projects we sit on right now where the heads of facilities in their respective organizations will turn over that piece of the puzzle to our project managers to marshal and keep it up to date and take ownership of that with their internal hierarchy. That's the best thing that can happen to us. Use us as that resource and let it be complementary to your internal group because you want to grow there from facilities to director of real estate to director of leasing to CFO, CEO, however it works. So we want to be helpful to our clients.
And Scott, what are you most personally excited about looking to the future for you?
Oh, look, I'm doing this 37 years now, right? And I'm probably going to be doing it for another 15 or 20 because honestly, I love it. Yes, I have a son in the business who is 3 or 4 years in. That's one piece in the puzzle. But I got 50 people in the business that want to grow also. And, are we going to be 100 people one day? Who knows? You keep your options open. But I love the excitement of the business, and I'm not stroking you because it's the name of your show, the business piece of the puzzle with the design piece of the puzzle and being able to see this finished product that I will literally walk down the streets of Manhattan and look in buildings. And my kids, they laugh at me. And this is what my dad was doing. It's so weird. It translates. 390 Park Avenue. I did the second floor, 26,000 square feet, Northern Trust. It looks amazing, Dad. And I'm proud of what we've built and what we've become, where 50, 60 people can make a very good living off of that profession and to be able to help that through and being a strong part of making that happen.
Scott Spector, thank you for joining us today on the business of
I appreciate
architecture.
it. This is one of my favorite topics ever. So if you ever need anybody to complement your efforts, I think this is just an exciting discussion, and wherever I can be helpful, I really appreciate it.
All right, and here's today's smart practice tooltip. Attention architecture firm owners, if you're working late nights and weekends while still struggling to hit your financial targets, guess what? Not only are you suffering, but also your family and your children, your grandchildren, everyone in your life, and you're probably not charging enough, period. In our experience, most small firms are undercharging by 30 to 40% on every single project, leaving a substantial amount of money on the table year after year, miserable year. The Smart Practice Revenue Capacity Planner tool exposes this hidden money leak in just 30 minutes, showing you exactly how much extra revenue you could make based upon your existing projects and team. Get this Smart Practice tool 100% free by going to businessofArchitecture.com/capacity.
Today's episode is sponsored by Vectorworks. Why settle for switching between multiple design programs to complete a single project? With Vectorworks Architect, you don't have to. Simplify your workflow with a hybrid 2D and 3D modeling environment made to support your work, from the pre-design phase all the way through construction documentation in a single platform. Learn more about the tool that can help you accomplish everything you need with the free 7-day trial of Vectorworks Architect. Get started here at vectorworks.net/business of architecture.
Today's episode of the Business of Architecture show is sponsored by Smart Practice, the world's leading step-by-step solution for small architectural practice owners that want to structure their existing practice so the complexity of business doesn't get in the way of the architecture. Smart Practice is Business of Architecture's done with you program, meaning that we step with you shoulder to shoulder and help you implement the Smart Practice method in your small architectural firm. Because likely it isn't your architecture skills that are holding you back. It's probably all those business elements, managing projects and people, dealing with clients, contractors, and money. So if you're ready to quit being a glorified administrator and get back to architecture again, go to Smart Practice Method to discover the proven, simple, and easy to implement Smart Practice Method that is revolutionizing firm management for owners and teams. And as always, I want to remind you that the views expressed on this show by our guest do not represent those of the hosts, and we make no representation, promise, guarantee, pledge, warranty, contract, bond, or commitment except to help you conquer the world. Carpe diem.